Now, many people know of Dr. Michael Burry, and that's because there's the famous movie, The Big Short, where he was able to predict the collapse of the stock market, the economic system. And right now, he's making a big call again, but he's kind of saying the opposite. He says that we're going to have a collapse, but it's going to come from a hyperinflationary scenario. And here to break down Dr. Michael Burry's predictions and to take a larger look at this hyperinflation theory, I have my good friend Steve Penny on here to join us. Now, if you've been wondering where Steve was, Steve, we talked about a month ago, his father had passed away. Steve and his family are doing great. We want to thank everyone for asking where Steve's been. You can give him a comment right there down below, but we'll be joined by Steve here in a minute. So excited to have him back on the channel. We were really missing him. So we're going to be discussing Dr. Michael Burry on the inflation scenario, the big short of global fiat currency. But first, I want to say Steve has the best free newsletter out there to understand the macroeconomic system, mining stocks, some of the best ways to profit from devaluation of currency, gold stocks, silver stocks, and uranium. The uranium market's blowing up right now. This is free. This is the best free newsletter that is out there to understand what's happening, but also to understand what to be buying and selling. I absolutely love it, and I recommend you sign up right now. It's right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments. It's free. It's the Silver Chartist newsletter right there down below. So make sure you check that out and support Steve's work. We'll pin it as the first comment. That is the free Silver Chartist news report. Make sure you hit the like button on this video to send it out into the YouTube universe so more people see today's episode. Subscribe and bell notification to get notified for future videos. Our sponsor, Vizsla Silver. Thank you for being our gold and silver mining stock sponsor, Vizsla Silver. And last but not least, comment down below, Steve rules. How you doing, Steve?
Good, man. Thanks for that kind intro. Really good to connect again. It's been too long, and it's always nice to talk with you. And I feel like I got a good connection with your audience too. So always enjoy coming and speak with you.
Yeah, I missed you, and I was noticing a lot of comments. Actually, people, I don't read that many of my comments, but every time I popped in, there was at least one asking where you were.
That's awesome.
So, Steve, the call of hyperinflation has almost always been for the craziest of crazy people. But now we're actually in an environment where even the Federal Reserve swamp creatures do not deny what is happening with inflation. Biden has said, oh yeah, we expected it, guys. And none of them are denying it anymore. And so it seems like there's no way out of it. They're just going to keep printing money. And to now have someone like Dr. Michael Burry, who, is as bright as they come, the big short man himself, talking about hyperinflation. What do you think about this? What does this mean? And what are you finding as you've researched this topic?
Yeah, so that was pretty stunning. It was a couple months ago, Dr. Burry put out a long tweet thread, and it's part of his MO to take down his tweets after he posts them, but you can still find archives of them, that other people have screen captured. But, for people who may not know, he shorted the housing market leading up to 2008, and he made like $800 million. And, as impressive as that is, it's easy for us to picture in hindsight like that he did that like months ahead of time. Well, for a trade like that, you have to be right. You have to be willing to be wrong for a period of time. And then all of a sudden, boom, it happens. And then you're right. You're proven correct. And I think that's going to be probably very similar to right now, where he's calling for hyperinflation. Now, I don't think that necessarily means imminent hyperinflation, but I do believe that we're on that trajectory. And, I think it's a bold call for people like Michael Burry and more mainstream investors to be talking about this, because you go back 2-3 years ago, like you just said, you were labeled some kind of conspiracy nut or, fringe for even mentioning the word hyperinflation.
So what is he calling for, and what do you, as you've looked in more and more to what he's suggesting, is it he's saying that we're printing so much money? I mean, what's the core behind why someone who, is not normally in a camp about money printing why is he calling for it?
Yeah, so he's pretty reclusive. So he'll make a tweet, and that's about all you get. It's not like he's out doing interviews and all this. So just reading his tweet, it sounds like he's been reading the book by Jen Parson, which was written back in 1974. It's called "Dying of Money: Lessons of the Great American and German Inflations." Got that backwards: German and American inflations. And it seems like a great book. I've been just perusing it here, but I haven't read it myself. But he's citing examples from that book, and he's comparing 1914 to 1923 Germany to 2010 to 2021 the United States. And there are indeed a lot of stunning similarities. But that's not to say we're headed for imminent hyperinflation. Now, I'm not necessarily sure he's calling for that either, but I think he's trying to tell people this is a realistic possibility that we should be prepared for.
What are some of those similarities?
So number one, I'm reminded of the David Morgan quote: 90% of the move happens in the last 10% of the time. So from 1914 to roughly 2021, if I remember correctly, the vast majority of that time, there were actually periods where the economy was booming in Germany, number one. And also the German mark actually rose relative to like the US dollar. The currency actually appreciated. So we see that right now. Like you'll see the dollar appreciate for periods of time against other fiat currencies. And he also notes the booming economy, like that everyone was speculating, and it seemingly everyone was making money speculating in these different sectors. He talks about, I think, the elevator operator, if I remember correctly, just making millions of dollars. So the wealth gap was growing tremendously wider in 1914 to 1923 Germany. And of course, we see that now. The wealth gap here in the United States has never been so great. And the blame for that lays squarely at the feet of the Federal Reserve, because currency creation, inflation, is the biggest driver of the gap between the rich and the poor. That's it.
So you're saying that therefore a lot of the time during this Weimar Germany scenario of hyperinflation, everything seemed strong. People said, oh, hey, look, it's like all this money, everything's looking so great. And people weren't, it was a similar type of mindset where there was almost a normalcy bias to the money printing that we have today, where people have seen it for so long and it's quote unquote worked for so long that people don't really have a concept that this could actually destroy currency, such as in a place like Venezuela, or as you said, from the book, dying of money. So that's one of the similarities in terms of the social perception of it.
Yeah, and if it's okay with you, Jake, I'll read two of his sentences here. I'm not going to read
Please.
the whole thing, but I've got two sentences right here. He says, speculation alone, while adding nothing to Germany's wealth, became one of its largest activities. That alone right there should sound very similar to what we see in the United States right now.
Say that again.
Speculation alone, while adding nothing to Germany's wealth, became one of its largest activities. I think about, the GameStop traders, the Reddit traders, even speculators in, some of these altcoins and things like that don't necessarily add any productive value to the economy. People are getting rich off of this stuff. The fever to join in, turning a quick mark, that was their currency, infected nearly all classes. Everyone from the elevator operator up was playing the market. Same thing today. We see record numbers of, unsophisticated investors with brokerage accounts trading. And they're making money because the Fed is injecting so much currency. So seemingly everything's going up. So right there's a couple similarities. And then the last sentence I'll read here. Throughout these years, the structure was quietly building itself up for the blow. So think 1914 to 1921 or 22. Germany's inflation cycle ran not for a year, but for 9 years, representing 8 years of gestation and only 1 year of collapse. And then he references 2010 to 2021 as those gestation years leading up to, his inferred, moment of collapse or hyperinflation.
Man, that is so good. There's a lot of good stuff in there. First of all, it's just amazing because that's the environment we're in, is like, right. It literally, through the devaluation of currency and the environment that's been set up socially and politically, people are compelled into just finding any speculative vehicle, no matter what it is, just something to try to pump cash. And that we saw that with a Dogecoin, with Elon's coin too. So that's amazing. But then you said a couple other interesting things. You said 8 years of gestation and then 1 year of an actual collapse. So it was a sustained inflationary period for 9 years, where it's essentially, even if it's not compounding, it's just snowballing. And right now, I've been saying to a lot of my guests recently and asking them, how do they see this unfolding? Because when I look at this, they're not going to tamper, in my opinion. It's impossible. And they know it is. I think they're just trying to talk the market down a little, so there isn't a psychological fear of too much inflation that happens. And so there's all these people that need money, that don't have jobs. There's all these other people that want money. Then they have all their infrastructure and infrastructure bills. So you're talking about a lot more money that's going to need to be printed. So I don't see how the inflationary trend stops. How do you think it plays itself out? And how do you think that that ties into the gestation and incubation period that we saw in Weimar Germany?
Yeah, one of the most commonly asked questions I've been getting lately is, Steve, do you think we're going to have inflation or deflation? And my jokingly answer is yes, because I think we're going to have both. And whenever we talk about these our analysis and forecasts, we need to think what time frame people are talking in. So over the longer term, I am firmly in the inflation camp. However, I don't rule out a deflationary impulse. And in fact, I think that's probably likely. I think for the Fed to really accelerate its currency creation and debt monetization, they're going to need another excuse for more helicopter money and just direct infusions of cash. So I think a stock market crash, a deflationary impulse, could really be the catalyst for the Fed to go full steroids with money printing, and that could unleash the inflation that we're likely to see. So in short, inflation first for the very short term, followed by the big inflation that many of us have been expecting for a long time.
So when you look at what's happening right now, and then you hear someone like Dr. Michael Burry discussing hyperinflation, what type of course do you think that we are ultimately on? You talked about inflation and deflation, and will there be a crash and whatever. But what do you think this trend looks like? What does the future look like in Steve Penny's eyes 5 years from now or 3 years from now?
Yeah, that's an interesting time frame you mentioned, because I think 3 to 5 years is probably a very likely time where we start to see a new financial system. I mean, that may sound sensational. I like to be very balanced and take a balanced approach. But every 40 to 50 years, there is a new financial system, and we're long overdue. The last one was 1971 when Nixon took us off of the gold standard. So we're overdue for a new financial system, some kind of new Bretton Woods moment. And in fact, even the IMF has called for that, a new Bretton Woods moment. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, that's coming. And I think that event is likely to be extremely inflationary, whether it involves special drawing rights issued by the IMF or central bank digital currencies. Regardless, I think there's going to be a lot more currency, and that's when we're going to see even more inflation. And it's important to note, sorry, I know you're about to ask a question, but inflation bails out creditors, or excuse me, it bails out borrowers, and it hurts creditors. Well, who are the biggest borrowers in the world? It's
United States government.
Yeah, exactly. So they benefit the most from inflation, but they just don't want it to happen too fast. They want to like manage it, just like they want to centrally plan everything. Unfortunately, history is ripe with examples of governments trying to do that, and it never works out well in their favor.
I don't know how you manage it other than force periodic stock market crashes to kill some of the mania and some of the frenzy. I'm not sure how else you do it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And by the way, it gives them a chance to. They know how to make money on volatility, and you can bet that these bankers make a lot of money whenever there's a sell-off. They make money both directions. And the primary way they're manipulating the market right now, people call it federal open market operations by the Federal Reserve. I call it federal open mouth operations, because it's just what they say. They talk about taper, boom, there goes the market down. Oh, taper's off, boom, market goes up. It's just words. So their primary manipulative vehicle right now is just words, or forward guidance, to be more technical.
And they're always words to the dislike of the market. They're always, we're going to talk, we're going to taper, we're going to raise interest rates. I don't think they are, but it almost seems like they're just trying to get corrections in the market so it doesn't. So money velocity of all things and the equities of all things just don't go straight parabolic infinitely
Right.
higher. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, whether they're going to taper or not, I think it's unlikely, but it honestly would not surprise me. I mean, if that happened, the last time they started the taper, they called it the taper tantrum back in 2013. They've been talking about it for a while, and finally they actually tapered. I remember back then, people like me and others were saying, "Oh, there's no way they can taper," and they did it. But it led to, I mean, a quick, massive sell-off in the stock market, and then they reverse course very quickly. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do it real quick, but if they do, that would give them the ammunition to come out with more stimulus, more easy money. And I think that would create the buying opportunity of a lifetime in commodities in a lot of sectors, to include silver, gold, and even uranium.
Absolutely. Now, for those listening right now, if you haven't yet, make sure you join the Silver Chartist newsletter. It's right there down below for free in the description and pinned to the comments right there down below. It's the best free newsletter discussing the macroeconomic climate, the best ways to make money at it, investing and trading, mining stocks, gold, silver, uranium, all that great stuff. And it's free. Everybody needs to be prepared, right? This is a war for our minds and our futures right now. And many people are going to lose that by at least not being prepared. And this is free. And so I highly recommend everybody do this. I haven't been able to tout Steve's free newsletter in a while because he hasn't been on in a while. But I've gotten thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have personally left comments and just said how great it was to be involved in the community and how much they've gotten out of it. So I want to encourage everyone to go right there down below for free to do that. Now, I want to ask you, Steve, in summary, what is the end game of it? Is it go until people lose faith in the currency and then we issue a reset? If so, what is the reset? What's on the other side?
Well, I'll take a super macro approach to answering this question. Is, the monetary system is one small part of this whole, change in the world that we're seeing right now. Not to use conspiracy terms, new world order, but literally the world order, the way that the world functions, the power structures that the world currently has are shifting, and they're changing very rapidly. And the monetary system is a key part of that, but it's not the only part of it. So, obviously, there's an agenda for, more global government, more infringement on individual rights and liberties. So, the trend right now, unfortunately, is for less and less individual freedom and, towards more of a global type government. Unless something happens to change that, there's a lot of opposition to it right now, which is somewhat optimistic. But that's where they want to go. And I'm a Christian, so I believe that we're moving towards that. We're told that's going to happen. So ultimately, I think that's where we're going.
So one of the things that I've realized is sometimes when I look at the larger picture of the world, these are also things that I don't have as much control over. And we talk a lot about them on this channel, but sometimes they make me quite frustrated. But if I look at my personal life, I've never been more excited, to be honest with you, because sometimes people will be like, "Oh, Jake, you're being negative." My personal life, I'm freaking excited. Commodities are really exciting. I have did very well in opportunities going back to March 2020 when the last sell-off happened. Now we have uranium kicking off in a huge way. All these loss of freedoms and types of things. In some ways, they've been cool because it's made me think about my life differently and being more global and like the nomad capitalist approach where like you have multiple places you live and you're a global citizen. And I'm excited to raise my daughter like that. And there's a lot of things about personal life I'm pretty pumped up about. And I'm excited for the challenge of maintaining my freedom and sovereignty in a world where these dark forces seem to want to control it. And I'm up to the challenge. And I want to know what are important tools in your tool belt for that challenge.
Yeah, well, first of all, what you said there is so encouraging. I mean, your optimism and your attitude is contagious, literally, for me too. Because there's times where, man, I get you can read some of this stuff and it can be depressing. So it's important to not stay there. It's important to know what's going on in the world, but there's a difference between worry and concern. I've said this on your show in the past. Worry is when there's nothing you can do about it. Worry is an unproductive emotion, but there's plenty of things to be concerned about. Concern is when identify a problem and there's something you can do about it. You take those steps, and then you move on. So we don't want to dwell in this negative, mindset all the time. So, there's a lot of things we can do. We can I think resilience is the key word. Resilience in every area of life and flexibility. Whether that's in your work situation, your physical location where you live, just being open to new ideas. Like you said, in crisis comes opportunity. You just have to be prepared for it.
So let's talk about resilience a little bit. Whether that's ancient religious or biblical text, whether it's interesting accounts of history, whether it's someone like Anne Frank, whether it's Viktor Frankl, who wrote A Man's Search for Meaning, about surviving the concentration camps. And it's about basically retaining your sovereignty from within. And he was able to not allow them to take away his soul, his freedom. What do you think are important ways for us to practice this type of mindset and apply this into our mind right now? Because we're in a world where we are being bombarded by this Great Reset agenda that is dehumanizing. It's against every value of freedom and humanity. And it's easy to feel like you're overwhelmed, or it's easy to feel like you're stuck. It might even just be you feel like you're stuck financially, or you're angry about what's happening, you're powerless. How do we practice that resilience? What's important there?
Yeah. So, on a practical level, there's things you can do. And those are identifying concern versus worry. If you have a concern, ask yourself, is there something I can do about this? And do it if it's within your means. If there's nothing you can do about it, don't worry about it. But it's, there's mindset. You need to be in the right mindset. I can just speak to myself, like I've told you before, I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm maybe not the typical person you might meet in church. So you and I have had some offline conversations, but that's my grounding. I know that I can be a light in a dark world, and there's a higher purpose for whatever I go through. And, I want to do the best that I can to be a blessing to others, no matter what happens to me in this world. So that's my personal experience. I know that may not speak to everyone.
Steve, why should someone join Silver Chartist? What's so great about Silver Chartist? As we wrap up here, we'll link it for free right there down below in the comments and in the description. We've talked about Michael Burry's hyperinflation case. We've talked about some of the similarities between Weimar Germany and today, how this might play itself out. And then we've talked, very briefly just about some important mindsets and some important psychologies that might be a good addition. Now, to bring it full circle, why should someone sign up to the free Silver Chartist report, and what is Silver Chartist all about?
Sure. Yeah. What are we all about? I'll start there. Our mission is time freedom to pursue life's higher callings, things of eternal significance. That's why Silver Chartist exists. It's not to make a bunch of money. And, when we started this just over a year ago now, I thought the newsletter industry is ripe for disruption. And there's a lot of good newsletters out there. I respect a lot of these guys, but what I want to do is give a fully transparent, over-the-shoulder service with real-time alerts. So what I do, and I think is unique, is I show the members exactly what I'm doing in my personal portfolio. They know the exact stocks I have, whenever I push the buy or sell button in the long-term account, our members get an alert. It's fully transparent. And, there's not many people doing that. So that's really the benefit. And then the other one is our team. I know there's people who've been doing this longer than me. And like Jeff Clark, I'm just humbled to have Jeff Clark as a contributor. I consider him to be one of the best mining stock analysts in the world. He goes back to his Casey research days. David Brady, the man retired at 44 because he was so good at trading silver, gold, and commodities. And now he's a contributor. So I'm just humbled to be surrounded by this team. So all that to say, that's what we offer. There's a free version. There is the opportunity to upgrade to a low ticket version if you want to check that out. But really, I would just say start out with the free version and see how that treats you.
So you said a minute ago you haven't been on for a while. So I guess there's some people that maybe if they're not on your Twitter account, they may not even know that you now have got Jeff Clark and David Brady now as regular parts of the team. You've really turned the Silver Chartist into a top level information platform for everybody, huh?
Yeah, that's the goal. I like to say if I'm ever the smartest one in the room, I'm in the wrong room. So I'm trying to surround myself with the smartest people and to provide the most value to our members. That's the goal. We've also got other technical analysts too, Kevin and Patrick.
So we'll be having Steve back on now regularly again. Now that he's back, we want to wish him and his family well. Everybody can give him a well wishes, comment, or prayer right there down below in the comments. Right there down below is the link to Silver Chartist in the description and pinned to the comments. Make sure you hit that like button on this video, bell notification, and subscribe to send this out into the YouTube universe. If there's some topics you want to see Steve and I cover on a future episode, let us know right there down below. Steve, anything I missed? Anything you want to wrap up with?
No, that's it, brother. Really good to connect with you and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks for watching today's episode. We'll see you next time.